we are having less number of participants. So let us wait for 2 or 3 minutes, and within these 2 or 3 minutes, Mukesh, have you remembered? I gave you a small assignment yesterday,
Yes, sir. I remember, sir.
so you can give light on that.
Yes, sir. Actually, initially it was, sir, monopolies and restricted trade practices.
Yes,
So, yeah, 1969. So the basic purpose was to stop monopolization, sir. So
yes,
for stopping monopolization, what I read is they wanted to bind the capacity of an organization because if they produce more, if there
mm,
is if there is a large producer and if he'll produce more, and
mm,
Indian industry was not that capital intensive, so there were chances that there will be a very less number of industries coming up. So in order to stop that kind of thing, they what they did that if to get, I mean, they will not allow the full utilization of their installed capacity, sir. But later on, it was realized that it is not correct to stop the things and let producer produce whatever they can produce to their maximum capacity, sir. So then they realized that
okay,
instead of restricting them from capacity utilization, it is better to have lot of people coming up, sir. So MRTP was repealed by Competition Commission of India. So Competition Commission of India was started with the objective of having many competitors so that buyers should have choices with them, sir. Like recently,
okay.
there was a recent case of Vodafone and Airtel, sir. I've seen they went to
Mm-hmm.
CCI, Competition Commission of India, but CCI has refused.
Okay.
Yes, sir. They said that it is again going to be the monopolistic kind of competition in India, sir. But that has not been accepted by CCI, sir. But they said that
Uh-huh.
you also can come into business, you also can do whatever you have. Because Geo is not giving predatory prices, sir. What we read yesterday also, no, sir? Yes. So same thing was there, sir. I today I read the case, sir. Case study I was doing.
Well,
So
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mukesh, for giving for
and but
briefing
it is
about
very
the.
surprising, sir, that it was thought of in 2002, but it got
Yes.
implemented in this competition. It got implemented in 2009, sir. That is very surprising, and still it is in infancy stage, sir. Even lot of competition cannot be brought into India, sir. Even today. So let us see.
Yes. Previously,
Just like GST, there
yes,
was so
yes.
much opposition was there, no, sir. When GST was launched in
Hmm. Hmm.
2017,
Hmm.
there was there were too many
Hmm.
objections, sir. Otherwise, it is a
Hmm.
very good system. One India, one tax, sir, for GST, and so many laws are repealed because of that, sir. Instead of reading 8 to 10
Not
regulations,
everyone,
yes, sir.
not everyone thinks in the same line like yours, na.
Yes, sir.
That's the
Yes,
problem.
sir. Yes, sir. Because we also are working on
Politics
making
comes
sure
in the way.
politics comes in a way, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Similarly, they do not want Competition Commission of India to work in India also, sir. The same thing is there, sir. Same politics is happening.
Yeah. So thank you, Mukesh,
Thank you,
for
sir.
throwing light on this particular amendment or modification in the
Thank you, sir.
MRTP, which enables more players to come into the field of manufacturing, and they should manufacture as per their capability
Yes, sir.
to give options to make
Yes, sir.
things available at a large scale to our
Yes,
customers.
yes, sir.
And of course, if the domestic requirement is fulfilled, then the surplus could be exported.
So, yes, sir. That is
So, thank you, Mukesh. So, welcome once again, Surbhi, Mukesh, and Taniska. We'll be discussing about the distribution decisions today. Distribution decision block comprises of your distribution channels, your marketing intermediaries, and marketing logistics. So, let us first talk about distribution channels. So why the concept of distribution channels evolved? You can think the geographic separation between the manufacturer and the consumers needs something to fill the gap, because the manufacturer may be at New Delhi and the consumer may be at Kanyakumari. So the long gap between the manufacturer and the consumer needs to be filled, and this is done by the distribution channel, which actually acts like a bridge between the manufacturer and the consumer. The distribution channel consists of a set of people and an organization basically involved in the transfer of ownership of a product as it moves from the producer to the consumer. Primarily, it is concerned with the movement of goods, again from the point of production to the point of consumption. If we take into account the number of participants or the main participants in the distribution system, then there would be two end participants. One would be the manufacturer and the other one would be the consumer. In between them, the intermediaries and the facilitating agencies, they step in. The intermediaries means they are involved in changing the ownership or transferring the title of a product or service from the manufacturer to the consumer, and the facilitating agencies, as the name itself suggests, they exist to facilitate the process of moving of products. The best example could be your transporting system. So, the channel of distribution basically refers to the route taken by the produced goods as they flow from producer to the consumer. It is a network of institutions that perform a variety of interrelated functions in the movement of goods. Now, what is the significance of distribution channel? How or in which way it helps the consumer? Yes, of course, it helps the manufacturer because it gets the goods from the manufacturer to be transferred to the consumers. But what benefit the distribution channel gives to the consumer? First, the distribution channel makes it possible for the consumers to get the product wherever they want. That means nearest to their existing place. That means it is creating place utility. Again, because of the distribution channel, the consumers are getting the product when they are needing it. That means it is creating time utility of the product. And these two things, first the consumer look for. Then of course, if the consumers are getting the product within the close vicinity of their residence, then it is also creating a convenience factor for them. And finally, when the consumers are possessing the product, it is also creating a possession utility. So these are the significance of a distribution channel for the consumers. Now, how the distribution channel function? Distribution channel, as you know, facilitates the selling process of a manufacturer or producer by bringing that producer physically close to the consumers through himself or through the distribution channel. The producer and the consumers, they come closer. Second, the distribution channel takes a heavy order or executes or carries a heavy order from the manufacturer. But when it comes to the consumer, the distribution channel takes the responsibility of breaking the bulk and cater to the small requirements of buyers, which is a very important thing because a manufacturer cannot do it every time for all consumers. For the manufacturer, the distribution channel is rendering this service. Then again, when a distribution channel is dealing with the products of a certain company, certain organization, definitely it will advertise that products. That means they will assist the main manufacturer in advertising, in sales promotion, and even to some extent after sales service also. Because a consumer, if anything goes wrong with the product, the consumer doesn't know the manufacturer. First, he will approach either the retailer or the wholesaler from whom the consumer has bought the product. So in that case, the distribution channel serves the organization, serves the manufacturer, and also to expand market. The distribution channel on its own keeps searching to find new buyers. So all these functions are done by a distribution channel. Now distribution channels are used by the manufacturer mostly for forwarding their products to the consumer. So basically it's a physical flow, it's a forward flow. And for almost like the physical product, like the ownership, these two things will be forwarded to the customer. So it comes under forward flow. But one important thing the distribution channel is doing for the manufacturer is the payment flow, which comes in the reverse direction. That means when the consumer pays for the product, that amount will be collected by the retailer or the wholesaler. Then in turn that amount will come back to the manufacturer. So here the flow is in the reverse way. This is backward flow. And how the distribution channels are used? Distribution channels are used to, as all of you know, to make the product available to the customer. But this depends on certain strategy of the manufacturer. If the manufacturer wants to appoint only one intermediary between itself and the consumer, then it is called one label channel. If it appoints two intermediaries, that means within the manufacturer and the consumer, if there is a wholesaler and a retailer, then it will be a two-label channel. Similarly, there are three labels which are determined by the agents. There is also one channel known as a zero-label channel. You must be having an idea. Zero level channel means there will be no intermediary between the manufacturer and the consumer. Now this zero level channel, you are getting some good examples of this particular system. When you are doing online shopping, you are finding the same thing available in the market, and you are finding the same thing in the online marketing at a less price, at a less cost. So you can imagine why that cost decreases when you purchase it online, because there is no other intermediary. The organization which is giving you the facility of online marketing is the only intermediary. So the commission margin or the incentives which are given to different intermediaries at different level is saved, and that amount is enjoyed by the consumer. To be more precise, on a zero level channel, you can experience, you must have experienced, some salesmen are moving door to door to sell product. It is also an example of zero level channel. That means the person who will be selling you the product will get some incentive because of its sale, but because the salesman is directly getting the product from the manufacturer and selling to the consumer will automatically get benefit as the product will cost the consumer low or less. So till this point, am I clear, or is there anything doubt in your mind?
No, sir, no doubt.
No, sir, it's clear.
Survi is present, Mukesh, Pinky, Tanishka. I think, Tanishka, are you attending classes for the last 3-4 sessions, or this is your first class?
So,
Yes.
so this is my first class.
Okay. From where you are attending the class?
So my regional center is, they were saying that my regional center is Bhubaneswar.
Okay.
I was trying to connect with the class since 2-3-5 weeks, but couldn't connect with this. We got
So you are
linked.
you are attending the session from Bhubaneswar.
No, sir, I'm attending the session from New Delhi.
Okay. And Pinky is attending the session from Ghaziabad, I think. Hello? Pinky, can you hear me?
No.
Hello, Pinky? There is some problem with your mic. I cannot hear you. Okay, then. Till this point, there is no confusion. Now we will be discussing about the factors that influence the choice of channel. That means which distribution channel the manufacturer will opt for, will go for. Which factors influence this choice? The manufacturer generally considers 4 factors that influence its decision for the choice or for choosing a channel. One is its market consideration, one is its product consideration, one is middleman consideration, and one is company consideration. All these factors influence the decision of choosing a distribution channel. So what is market consideration? Market consideration comprises of the manufacturer will think as per their research and survey. They assume what is the size of the customers to whom they will be addressing, they will be supplying. Then what would be the potential volume of sales they expect? If they think one channel, distribution channel, is not adequate for achieving the target volume, then they can explore, they can go for more channels. Similarly, they will think of concentration of buyers. Concentration of buyer means when the buyers, the main bunch of buyers, if they exist within a circumference of 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers, then the concentration is supposed to be higher. If the buyers are scattered over a longer distance, then the concentration is supposed to be thinner. So if the concentration of buyers is more, then they can address them with a single distribution channel. But if the concentration is scattered, is thinner, then they have no option but to go for multiple channels. Similarly, when you talk about product consideration, it depends on the characteristic, it depends on the durability, it depends on the attributes of the product for which the manufacturer will take decision. Let us start with products. Those are perishable in nature. Perishability means the product, if not stored properly, will be damaged within a short period of time. Products like milk, products like meat, and also products like milk, eggs, these are perishable in nature. If they are not handled with care, they will incur loss to the organization. When the products are perishable in nature, usually the manufacturer go for short channels. Now we will discuss what is short channel and what is long channel in distribution system. Short channel means there will be less intermediary and the orders or the supply should be done in a speedy way, in a fast way, in a quick manner, so that it reaches the consumer quickly within the stipulated time, so that the product can be utilized properly. Otherwise, they will be destroyed. They will perish. And long channel means you are appointing more number of intermediaries in between. The process of transportation is also taking a longer time. Let me give you an example. If I have given you an example for milk and meat and egg, and usually the manufacturer or the organization adopts a short channel process. Similarly, for ready-made garments, for dress materials, for your stationery goods, for toothpaste, toothbrush, because they are not perishable in nature, they can be sent through a long channel. That means it can reach the retailer or it can reach the customer even after 15 days. Even after 15 days from the date of dispatch from the manufacturer, there will be no problem. So depending on the perishability, the manufacturer takes decision. Depending on the Durability, the manufacturer takes decision. Similarly, there is another factor on which the manufacturer is compelled to take a decision. When the products are heavy and bulky, like cement, like steel, like heavy machinery, in these products, distribution and handling costs are more. So they cannot appoint more intermediaries, because every time the unloading loading will be very much costly, will become very much expensive for the organization, and in the end that will cost more to the consumer. So for these products also short channels are preferred. Similarly, for sophisticated items, electronics equipments, short channels are preferred. Sophisticated equipment means your laptops, the advanced Xerox machines. These are supplied through short channels. But some products like electronics toys, your timepieces, usually the manufacturers go for long channels, because they will be they are durable products and they will last for a longer period of time. They will not perish. So on this basis also the manufacturer takes decision. So two factors we have discussed. One is your market consideration, one is your product consideration. In market consideration, the manufacturer thinks of the size of the customers, the potential volume of its sales. It takes into account the concentration of buyers, and while considering the product, it takes into account the perishability, the durability, the bulkiness, the technical nature of the product. Similarly, when the manufacturer thinks about the distribution channel, it takes into account the middleman consideration, and the middleman consideration is done on 2 or 3 bases. First, whether middleman as per your choice is available or not, because as you know, middlemen also, the companies they look for the track records of middlemen. They should choose a middleman on which they will be relying, on which organization they will be having trust for their products to be sold. So first, a manufacturer will look for a middleman which would be or who would be trustworthy. If the middleman, the desired middleman is available, so far so good, the company will go with that middleman. But if that middleman expresses his inability to accept your product, because it is already occupied with products of the same nature of other 2 or 3 manufacturers, then they have to choose a new middleman. Whoever available in the market, among them they have to choose. Whoever they choose, they look for 2 or 3 things: whether the middleman has good track record, whether the middleman is financially sound or not, whether their services are up to the satisfaction of consumers and the previous manufacturers. So considering all these factors, the types, the availability, they choose the distribution channel. And from the company's point of view, there are certain policies which are adopted by the company for its product, for its marketing. So from the company's point of view, the company will look for a middleman or a distribution channel which will be cost effective for him. That means when a middleman becomes cost effective for the manufacturer, subsequently the product will be cost effective for the consumer. That is one reason, that is one aspect the manufacturer takes into account. Again, it looks for the experience, whether the particular channel or a particular middleman has the expertise, has the capability of dealing with such products before, or they need training, specific training on this particular product. So overall, the company looks for a middleman who will fall into the category, or who will be fulfilling all the criteria, all the conditions in their policy. So these are the four factors which influence the decision of choosing a channel. Then there will be channel design decision. Once you decide on a channel, whom to appoint as your middleman, whom to appoint as your intermediary, then you have to design the channel. That means how many intermediaries you will put between you and your customers, on which basis you will appoint them. So this designing comprises of 5 steps. Channel design. Channel designing depends on your size of order. Let me give you an example. Suppose you are getting order in bulk from a particular place, though the number of buyers is small, but you are getting good order, large order from 5 or 6 buyers. So at that place, you may cater to the needs of consumers by appointing just one intermediary. On the other hand, suppose there are thousands of buyers for your product, but they are individual buyers. They are taking 1 or 2 at a time. So in order to cater the needs of 1000 buyers scattered at different places, you have to think of appointing intermediaries as per the requirement. That means more than one. Similarly, waiting time is taken into consideration. These things are done in order to provide a satisfactory service to the customers. The main objective is to deliver a satisfying service to the consumers. So for that, you need a speedy service. If they are scattered at different places, though their order is very small, because they are individual consumers and they are taking 1 or 2 products at a time, still then you need to cater to their needs, and you have to appoint more than 1 outlets in that area. Similarly, waiting time. Waiting time means whenever the consumer wants your product, it should be made available to him. For that reason also, you appoint middleman, you appoint intermediary, you design your channel accordingly. Similarly, for product variety. Product variety means always customers prefer a greater collection of products. They need variety. Once you make available the different varieties of your products at one outlet, that will attract more consumers to choose from your wide range of products. So these are the things which are taken into consideration for the first step, whose objective is to give a desired service to the consumers. Similarly, your channel design, in the channel design, there is another step to establish the objectives of your marketing, of your organization, and the probable constraints. Well, any effective planning determines which market segments you want to serve and which would be the best channel to use. That remains the objective of any marketing plan. Then the third step would be, if you have analyzed the customer's need in the first step, the desired service which is required by the customer in the first step, the second step is to address them properly. Now the third step would be to identify how to cater their needs. That means how to identify your channel alternatives. In this case, for reaching the customer, you can appoint agents, distributors, dealers, and even you can do telemarketing by directly contacting with the customers over telephone. So you have to, the manufacturer has to identify which channel will be most beneficial for the organization. In case of supplying your product to the distribution channel, basically two types of distribution takes place. One is called exclusive distribution, the other one is called selective distribution. Exclusive distribution means you are appointing a channel, an intermediary who will be exclusively dealing with your product, not with anyone, not of anyone else's product. When you are going for selective distribution, then many intermediaries are interested to market your product, but you are selecting a few among them as per your satisfaction and giving them the responsibility to do marketing for your products. Then once you decide which channel alternative is best for you, then you have to determine terms and conditions for the channel members. And these terms and conditions basically rest on price policies, your condition of sale, their assigned territory, and some specific services which are to be performed by the middleman, by the channel. Price policy calls for the producer to establish a price list and the related discounts that intermediaries should get. The price policy should be equitable for every intermediary. One dealer cannot complain against another dealer that the second dealer is getting more favor from the manufacturer in terms of price. The price policy remains same for all the middlemen, for all the intermediaries, because already the manufacturer establishes a price list to which all the intermediaries will adhere to. Then the condition of sale. Condition of sale means how the payment will be made, what are the terms and conditions on that, and what is the company's policy for defective merchandise, defective products, how it will be reimbursed or how the product will be replaced, or whether that product, if damage occurs to the product at the intermediary place, then who will be responsible. So all those conditions of sales will be made. Then every intermediary, every distributor will be assigned a particular territory. That means within that territory they will be supplying. They cannot interfere into another one's territory, another supplier's territory or another dealer's territory. And the specific services which are to be performed, this is a mutual agreement. That means suppose you are a manufacturer, the intermediary is taking goods from you. So that will be a mutual agreement that till your product reaches the intermediary, you have the responsibility of delivering it safe and sound, and the transportation cost will be borne by you. You will help the intermediary with promotion materials. That means the materials meant for advertisement, so that it can advertise your product by holding, by fixing signboard of your product at his warehouse or godam. Similarly, the intermediary has the responsibility of storing your product in a convenient way, has to keep record of your supplied product, and they can ask for adequate training on your product if their salesperson lack that. So all those things combinedly makes the terms and responsibility of channel members. So what we have done so far? First, we analyze the customer's needs for service. Then we establish the organization objectives. Then we go for identification of major channel alternatives. After finding or after choosing the channel, we have placed some certain terms and conditions. Then the major alternatives to be evaluated so that your product can be moved to the market conveniently to reach the customers. And that is always, whenever a process goes on as per a plan, the last part, the last step in that process would be the control part. I have discussed it earlier also. When you are driving a bike, you know where to apply brakes, that is control. And in a free highway, when you are driving your vehicle, you know up to how much speed limit you can press your accelerator, so that you can have control over your vehicle. Similarly, in a marketing process, while choosing the distribution channel, you should have control and an adaptive criteria for them. That means if the sales will not occur as per your expectation, you should try to find out the reasons and need to address them as quickly as possible. The deviation from the desired path may be due to lack of selling skill, may be due to your higher price, may be due to the inadequacy in the product, inadequacy of product knowledge on part of the sales force. So you have to take corrective measures and make it convenient for your intermediary, for your distribution partner to sell your product in the market. So till this point, am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Hello. So far what we have discussed? So far we have discussed what is the basic concept of distribution channel, what are the basic functions, then your factors which influence the choice of channel, then the channel design process. Now we'll be moving into channel management. Channel management. Management, it basically means to do the right thing at the right time. So, company or a manufacturer, how it manages the channel partners. First, it selects the channel members, and we have already discussed. They select the channel members on the basis of their experience, on the basis of their track record, on the basis of their financial strength, on the basis of their dealings with others, on the basis of their service reputation. On this basis, they select channel members, channel partners. Then the channel management, what would be the next step? All the members of the distribution channel may not be familiar with your product, may not be having adequate knowledge of your product. So in sales, in order to promote sales, they need some special knowledge, they need training on your product. So that needs to be addressed. That needs of the sales force or the members of the channel partner, that should be addressed through proper training. And once you provide training for them to refine their skill, to refine their knowledge, automatically another factor will come, that is called motivating factor. You can motivate the channel members, and motivation can be done in 3 or 4 ways. You relate it with your daily life example. When you are able to motivate, under which circumstance you are able to motivate someone? First, you can motivate someone by giving him or her any incentive. You can motivate your child by saying him that if you finish this homework by 8 today, I will give you a chocolate. That is a motivation for him. Similarly, in sales, motivation comes in terms of monetary benefit. So, there could be a reward provision. Similarly, if you are a very knowledgeable person in your locality, whenever you speak to the persons in your street, they listen to you attentively. That means they admire you as a leader. And this also holds good for the marketing, because if the manufacturer is of high reputation, the intermediaries, the channel partners accept the manufacturer as the leader, and they want to stay with the manufacturer. They want to stay in touch, to stay attached to the manufacturer. That is one way of controlling. And of course, you know how to manage. If your child obeys you, does its homework by 8, you will give him a chocolate you have promised. If it doesn't do, then you also have another way of coercive power. That means you can threaten him. If you do not do, I am going to beat you. So that is also there in the management of channel partners. If someone doesn't perform, if any channel partner doesn't perform as per your expectation, once or twice you will counsel him, you will provide adequate training to him, but despite of all those things, if that channel partner doesn't perform well, then you have no option but to be separated. You will drop that channel partner from your line of intermediaries and you will look for new one. So these are the basic elements in managing your channel partners. There are also some smaller points you can add to that. You can evaluate your channel partners in terms of their performance, whether they are giving satisfying services to the consumers, whether they are attaining the required sales level in the market. So you can add to that. But whenever you find someone is not doing well with your product as a channel partner, you always have the option to modify that arrangement. What I told, you can try to improve that particular partner, but despite of your effort, if the partner doesn't do well, doesn't perform as per your expectation, you can separate that partner from you. While dealing with the channel partners, the distribution channels, some conflicts arise, and it's common. No matter how well you design your channel and how well you manage your channels, conflict will happen. But it doesn't mean that conflict always leads to loss. Conflicts sometimes inspire you to do better. So what are the types of channel conflicts? There would be 2 or 3 types. The well-known conflicts are vertical channel conflict and horizontal channel conflict. If the manufacturer has conflict with any of its suppliers or any of its partners, which is either rendering a service, which is doing a service, providing a service to the manufacturer, if a conflict happens between them, it is called a vertical channel conflict. Let me give you an example. If you are a manufacturer of soft drinks and your bottles are made at a certain plant, certain plant is providing you bottles. Your fierce competitor also approaches the same bottler, same plant to manufacture a bottle for him. So in that way, a conflict arises because you can allege that manufacturer of bottles that you have been doing bottles for us for the last 10 years. Now, how you agreed to manufacture bottles for our competitors? So conflict happens in this way. This is called vertical conflict. Another one is there which is called horizontal channel conflict. Horizontal conflict means conflict will happen between the members of the same level. Suppose it is the conflict between dealers. Dealers are at same level. Some dealer is complaining that other dealer is getting more favor from the manufacturer. So this is called your horizontal channel conflict. When there is conflict, obviously an organization, a manufacturer will look for the causes of conflict. Causes of conflict may arise because there would be difference of opinion between the field staffs and telemarketers. There would be conflict between the field staffs and the dealers. So how these conflicts take place? Suppose, let me give you an example. Suppose, let us take the example of an insurance company, life insurance company. The agents really work hard to procure a policy and they are not salaried from the organization. So the insurance agents, they will get commission when they sell a policy. Now there is another segment in the same insurance sector, life insurance sector, a telemarketing sector, they are operating. They will contact customers randomly from the telephone number, and if anyone shows any interest in insurance policy, life insurance policies, they invite him to the branch and sell him a policy. So what happens sometimes, the agent, the consumer, sometimes it happens, the same consumer comes to office who has been approached previously by an agent. And when the policy is done by the telemarketing staff, then a conflict arises between the telemarketing staff and the agent, because the agent has approached that customer previously, the customer has got all the briefings from the agent, but finally bought the policy from the telemarketer. So in this way conflict happens. Whenever conflict happens, it is the responsibility of the manufacturer to manage those conflicts. So how these conflicts could be managed? In most of the cases, the manufacturer encourages the channel partners, the distribution channel members, by giving them a feeling of belonging to the same family. That means they are inevitable, inseparable part of the organization. Whenever there is a reward ceremony, whenever there is any function, they invite them as a part of their establishment to be present. They give them certain dignity, certain benefit, so that the channel partners, they feel the belongingness and minimize the conflict. Still then, if the conflict goes more acute, then basically there are three methods which are adopted to resolve any conflict. One is diplomacy, one is mediation, and another one is arbitration. Wherever there is a conflict and conflict goes acute. Diplomacy means each party will send one representative or one group to meet with each other and resolve the issue. And those team of members from both the parties will be nominated by the parties itself. Then mediation way means a neutral third party will be chosen. A neutral party will be chosen who will be acceptable to both the parties having conflict, and both the parties will be placing their conflict, and whatever the mediator decides, that will be acceptable that will be accepted by both the parties. And in case of arbitration, they approach an adjudicator before whom they will present their argument one by one, and the arbitrator will give its decision on the matter. The process of mediation is a bit informal, but the process of arbitration is a bit more formal. Otherwise, in both the cases, same thing is being done. So with this, we come to the end of your channel partner, your distribution channels, how to choose, what are the factors influence our decision, how to design the channels, and what are the types of channel conflicts, what could be the causes, and how the management of this distribution channel could be done effectively by a manufacturer. Now we will move to the next unit, which again specifically will tell you about the different marketing intermediaries. Same thing, the distribution channel. Now they will be categorized specifically depending on their performance, depending on their tasks to be accomplished. So before going to that, anyone, do you have any doubt? Mukesh, Pinky, Tanishka, Surbi.
No, sir, no doubt, sir.
Surbi, shall I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we will be discussing about the marketing intermediaries. The same thing. Those intermediaries, they work as the marketing, as the distribution channel. The same role they execute. They help the organization to carry their products to the consumers. They act like a link between the manufacturer and the consumers. As you have already known, they create a bundle of utilities for the consumers as well as the manufacturer. In the process of distribution, they create place utility, time utility, convenience utility, ownership utility for the consumers. In their effort, the intermediaries, they increase the efficiency of the exchange process on part of the manufacturer, because it is the effort of the middleman, it is the effort of the intermediary which reduces the extra effort which was supposed to be from the part of the manufacturers to reach the consumers. A manufacturer alone cannot take care of all the consumers without the intermediaries. So it gives economy in effort to the manufacturer. Then the intermediaries help in covering a larger market. Because of these intermediaries, the manufacturer, the product of the manufacturer can reach every corner of the nation. And from the consumer's point of view, it makes the product available locally. The consumers don't have to travel longer distance to avail that product. And middleman also, the intermediary, they do the role of a financer also, to whom they act as a financer, because sometimes let us take the example of two middlemen, two intermediaries. One is wholesaler, another one is retailer. About them we will be studying in the next unit also. Wholesaler gets the products from the manufacturer and then supplies it to the retailer, and the retailer sells it to the consumer. In India, in most of the cases, these wholesalers, they sell their products to the retailers in credit. So this credit selling means they are indirectly financing the retailer The retailer may not have money, may not have 1 lakh rupees to purchase the products, but they can give those products of 1 lakh rupees in credit. So that, and it is at their own responsibility. So that the retailer can sell the products within a span of 15 days to 1 month, and can repay the wholesaler. So in that way, it acts as a financer also. These are basically the roles of middlemen, the roles of intermediaries. They create utilities for consumers. They make economy in effort for the manufacturer. For them, the market coverage becomes bigger. They make local convenience for the consumers. And for retailers, they act as financiers, intermediaries. And also, as you know, they help in promoting a product, because if the intermediary is dealing with a product, it will try to boost the sale. It will try for the product to be advertised more. So on its own, he makes the sales promotion for the manufacturer. He makes the advertisement. He sticks the banner. That means, as a whole, the intermediary tries to expand the market for the manufacturer. Now, when we are talking about the middlemen, the intermediaries, then what are the types of intermediaries? Basically, the middlemen can be categorized into two groups. One is your primary participants, another one is your ancillary participants. Primary participants mean the organizations which undertake to perform the primary function of transferring the ownership of the goods to the consumer, or transferring the ownership of the goods to others. And who are ancillary participants? Ancillary participant means those participants who facilitate the process of transferring the ownership. And the best example, as you know, is your transportation and your advertising agencies also. So on that basis, you can divide middlemen into two categories. One is primary, another one is ancillary. But if you consider functioning of the organization, functioning of the intermediaries, you can divide them into 4 or 5 categories, like commission agents, like brokers, like dual trader agents, like C&F agents. So on the basis of their functioning, they are called functional middlemen. Let us take some of the examples. The most common functional middleman is an agent. An agent, what is the role of an agent? An agent is an approved person of the organization to sell the products on its behalf. But the agent doesn't get any salary. The agent is authorized to sell the product of an organization, the product of a manufacturer, but unless he sells the product, he doesn't get anything. Whatever he will sell, he will be benefited. He will get commission from those sales as a certain percentage of sales. They are called commission agents. Who are brokers? Broker, you can assume broker is like a showroom. Suppose you are entering a TV showroom. That showroom has TVs of different varieties and of different manufacturers. So what happens, that showroom is a connecting place it's a connecting place between the company, between the manufacturer and the consumers. Whichever product you take interest, the broker will just explain its features. But the final decision lies on you. Whichever product is sold, the broker will eagerly sell you, because on every product sold, the broker is going to get a certain percentage as his incentive. So it connects the manufacturer with the consumer, but unlike an agent, it does not pursue a particular consumer to buy a certain product of a certain company, because it is not affiliated or it is not attached to a single company. It deals with the same product of different organizations, different companies. So that is the function of a broker. Now in commission agent, if the commission agent is authorized to sell products on credit, if the commission agent is authorized to sell product on credit and takes the responsibility of the risk associated with the credit, because if that credit is not recovered, he will be held responsible. This is risky sale. Why the agents go for this risky sale? The agents go for this risky sale because in this type of sale, they get more commission, more incentive. When this type of sales activities is done by an agent, they are called Deltrader agents. And there are also agents like auctioneers, C&F agents, carry forward agents. Auctioneer means, suppose you have some surplus product, you want to sell them in the lot, you appoint an intermediary to make the auction for you. There are some specialized agencies who do auctioning. The purpose of auction is to sell all the products at a time. Either they are surplus, or you don't have space to store them, or they have a bit, they contain some of a bit damaged product. In that case, the role of an auctioneer will take place, will come into picture. And there are also agents like carry forward agents, C&F agents. C&F agent means they are appointed for a particular territory or the particular state. C&F, although the agent is suffixed to their name, carry forward agents, but actually they are not agents. They are supposed to be a part of the company, because from them all the wholesalers of the state will procure their orders. That means they represent the company. Whatever orders the wholesalers obtain from the retailers, they will place it not directly with the company but with the C&F agent. C&F agent acts like the representative of the company in that particular territory or state, and anything the wholesaler or retailer has to do, they have to deal with the C&F agent. So these are the middlemen on the basis of their function. Now, there is also middlemen on the basis of their on the basis of merchandising. In this segment, the concept of wholesale traders and retail traders come. Wholesale means merchants who buy goods from manufacturers and sell them to retail traders or industrial consumers. That means those agencies which basically do the function of reselling are known as wholesale traders. They don't consume the item, they do reselling. And to whom? They basically do the reselling to industrial consumers or retail traders. Now, who are retail traders? Retail traders are those merchants who sell products to the ultimate consumers. They purchase from the wholesalers and sell them to the consumers. Now, wholesalers, again, there are many types of wholesalers. One is on merchandise basis, another one is on the method of operation basis, another type of wholesaler exists on a territory, on area basis. So let us in brief discuss about some of the types. On merchandise basis, if you categorize wholesalers, then there will be general merchandise wholesalers, general line wholesalers, and single line or specialty wholesalers. Now let us start with general line and specialty line. General line wholesaler means these merchants carry a number of goods in the same product line. That means a merchant can hold items of all types of daily household necessities, like your paste, like your brush, like soap, like detergents, like razor, like shaving cream, all those things. These are called general line wholesalers who hold stocks of general goods which are supposed to be used in our daily life. What is the difference between general line wholesalers and general merchandise wholesaler? General merchandise wholesaler usually holds goods of different categories. Different categories means that merchant, the general merchandise wholesaler, can hold stocks of electrical goods. At the same time, it holds the stocks of sports goods. At the same time, it holds the stocks of cosmetics. So the varieties of goods it is dealing with are purely separate from each other. This type of merchant is called general merchandise wholesaler. And the general line wholesaler, the difference between the general merchandise and general line wholesaler is that general line wholesaler holds the products which comes under a common set, like the daily use materials, or like your staple foods, like rice, dal, wheat. These will come under general line wholesaler. And a single line or specialty wholesaler means they will be dealing with a specific item, single item, and they will be holding huge stock of that. So in this basis, on merchandise basis, the wholesalers are divided into three categories. Similarly, on the basis of method of operation, they are divided into two categories. One is service wholesaler, another one is limited function wholesaler. Service wholesalers means they are doing all the service for the manufacturer. They are doing the services like advertising, like labeling, like branding, like packaging for the manufacturer. And limited function wholesaler means the wholesalers who will be doing a part of these services. Suppose the wholesaler has taken the responsibility of performing only packaging, labeling and grading. So that will be a limited function wholesaler. and the wholesaler who is doing all the services for the manufacturer are called service wholesalers. Similarly, on area wise, there would be local wholesalers, district wholesalers, regional or national level wholesalers. So on these basis, the wholesalers are divided. Now we can discuss about the functions of wholesalers. The functions of wholesalers uh, constitute of assembling. Assembling means they are holding stocks of different items. Then also another function of wholesaler is dispersion. That means they are distributing to different locations. The third function is warehousing. That means they are holding stocks. They are actually having a place, having a space to hold the stocks. Then in some cases they are doing transportation. They are doing the transportation of goods to the retailers, to the consumers. And we already discussed they act as financer to retailers, these wholesalers. And also they play a role in price fixation, because the more efficiently the wholesaler performs his function, it will become more cost effective for the manufacturer. Ultimately, the consumer will get that product at a very affordable cost. Similarly, if we talk about the services of wholesaler, we already discussed this. What are the services it renders to the manufacturers? It acts like a warehouse. It takes the risk. It does the advertisement. And for the retailers, it acts like a financer. It caters as per the requirement. That means it divides the bulk into smaller segment so that the needs of the retailers can be addressed. So these are the things about the wholesalers, their types, their main functions. Now we can move to retailers. Retailers means those who are playing the intermediary role between the wholesaler and the consumers. So what would be the functions of retailers? The main function of retailer is to estimate the demand. That means as per the sale in a shop, it places its order with the wholesaler. That means it is giving an estimation of demand to the wholesaler. And when the wholesaler gets all the estimations from different shops, it finally places the order with the manufacturer. So indirectly, the retailer does the estimation of demand of the product. It also takes the responsibility of storing goods in a healthy way. It also becomes a part of transportation, because even though the wholesaler transports the goods to the retailer, still then the cost of transportation is added to the product, which is partly borne by the retailers also. And retailer does the most important task of selling, direct selling to consumers. If the retailer's behavior is good, if the retailer's knowledge of the product is good, if the retailer has a good reputation in the locality, it enhances the sale of the product, and subsequently the manufacturer gets benefit from this. If you classify retailers, then there are several types. On the basis of itinerant retailer means those retailers who carry on business moving from one place to another. They have no fixed outlet. They are known as itinerant retailers. A best example is your hawker, peddlers, your pavement traders. Pavement traders mean those who are found in the market areas, street crossings. Hawkers or peddlers every day you find on your own street. Market traders who usually sell their product in weekly market. So they are called itinerant retailers. When you talk about fixed shop retailers means they have a shop, permanent address to which the consumers will go and purchase the products. In the fixed shop retailers, there are also two categories. One is small scale retailers, another one is large scale retailers. Small scale retailers, as you know, their transaction will be small. They will be storing small stocks of goods. Either they can be present on the street corner or they can be present on the stall, permanent stalls. And when you talk about large scale retail shops, there are different categories of large scale retail shops. And I think it would be appropriate for me to speak 3 or 4 lines of every category. Under large scale retail shops, departmental stores come. Departmental store means it is a large scale institution comprising of a number of departments. Each department is specialized in a separate line of product and each department has its separate counter. But all these departments, they exist under one roof, that is departmental store. In the same manner, another institution exists, which is called a supermarket. Supermarket, it is also a large scale retail store. It also offers wide variety of product to the consumers. Then one can ask, what is the basic difference between a departmental store and supermarket? Because everything is available in both the stores and in a wide variety, wide range. The basic difference between a departmental store and a supermarket, the first difference is that in a departmental store, you will be finding separate counters and in almost all the counters, you will find salesmen to help you finding your product or to give you more clarity on any product or more information on any product. In supermarket, it is a self-service market. You will not find many salesmen there. And in the end, you have to make bill. You have to make one bill for all your purchases. This is the first difference. Second difference is that in supermarket, you cannot find the durable goods like refrigerators, televisions, but in departmental store, you can find these durable and fashionable goods. This is the basic difference between departmental store and supermarket. Similarly, there are cooperative stores. Cooperative stores means when consumers of same mentality join together to form a cooperative society to sell goods, it becomes a cooperative store. What is the benefit of cooperative store? These cooperative stores, they purchase materials directly from the manufacturer, so they can sell it to the consumer at a lower price. These cooperative stores do not give any type of credit. They purely transact on immediate cash basis. Similarly, there are multiple shops or chain stores. This system, what does this system say? This system denotes that one organization that controls a number of stores across different locations. All the stores are under one ownership, one management, but they are scattered at different locations. And you have that example in Odisha, like Lalchand Jewellers, and at national level, the Raymond shop. These are chain stores or multiple shops of one owner. Of course, there are some other types of large-scale retail shops. One is known as hire purchase trading. Hire purchase trading means, suppose there would be an exclusive showroom of electronics item ranging from TV, mixer grinder, refrigerators to air conditioners. They make an arrangement for the consumers to sell their products. The arrangement is that because these products like refrigerator, like air conditioners, they cost a bit more, and usually consumers do not get interested to spend a large amount at a time. They make provisions for the consumers to buy those items in installments. The arrangement remains like this. After paying the initial amount, the consumer will purchase the goods, purchase the goods. But the ownership will remain with the manufacturer or the organization or the store which is selling the product. Unless the last premium is paid, the consumer will not get the ownership. Once the installments are cleared, automatically the ownership will get transferred in the name of the consumer. If the installments are not paid, then the outlet or the shop has the authority to recover that particular product from the consumer or to move to the court or adopt a legal process. Similarly, there is one more term which is called super bazaar. You have come across many type of stores. One is departmental store, one is supermarket. Now it is super bazaar. What does a super bazaar mean? Super bazaars, basically these are large retail stores organized by cooperative societies which sell a variety of products under a single roof. Now you will ask me, then what is the difference between cooperative bazaars and super bazaars? So in cooperative store, it is usually run on a small scale, but the super bazaar may be a large scale establishment. This is the difference between the cooperative store and a super bazaar. And what is the difference between a super bazaar and a supermarket? Super bazaar is organized by the cooperative society. Supermarket is generally established as a private sector organization. Apart from all these stores, large scale outlets, one more concept is evolving. Also in India, also in European countries, in the developed country, it has already taken place. That is automatic vending machine. You put the specified amount or coin into the machine, your product will come out of the machine. That is automatic vending machine. Retail sale of articles with the help of this machine is done on a large scale. If the machines are placed at places like airports, railway station, bus terminals, shopping centers, At some places in India also we experience that we get soft drinks, we get soup, we get milk, but a this is an upcoming concept which is to be implemented in India. Now, what are the trends in wholesaling and retailing? If we think about the world scenario, progressive wholesalers all over the world, they constantly watch for better ways to meet the changing needs of the supplier and the target segment customers. They understand that, they fully understand that in the long run, they can only survive if they keep on adding value to their service by increasing the efficiency and effectiveness. So to sustain in the market in a long run, they constantly try to improve their services and reduce their costs. Those organizations, those intermediaries, those wholesalers who will not find an efficient way to deliver the value to the customer will perish from the market. Those who will be successful in finding an efficient way to deliver values with the help of modern technology will definitely survive in the market in the long run, and that is the trend in wholesaling in world and also in India, that everyone is trying to add value to its existence by increasing the efficiency and by minimizing the cost. Similar trend also follows in retailing, but in case of retailing, the scene is a bit different. Why different? Because still India has not got into the state of supermarket everywhere, shopping mall everywhere. We have not got into that concept so widely. Those are only available in metros and some of the bigger towns and cities. They are not accessible to the village people at their convenience. So this sector has a definite promise for future. So in our retailing, the trends in future days will be for establishing more shopping malls, more technology-based shopping behavior of the salesman. There will be more focus on factory outlets. Factory outlet means there will be a sell point very close to the factory where the customers will get the product at the wholesaler price. Because the factory, the manufacturer first sells it to the wholesaler instead of the wholesaler at the same price, the factory outlet sells the products. So it's very lucrative for the customer to get it at a low price. And also, due to globalization and liberalization, retailers are also finding opportunity to expand globally. Why I took this point? Why this trend is to be followed? Because the trend is already there. We have seen it. We have experienced it. You have seen McDonald's. You have seen KFC. They are simply retailers, and because of our globalization and liberalization, they have found their way to establish their business in India. So with this, we come to the end of your 14th unit. Now we will be moving to the last unit, which we will be completing today. But before that, I want to interact with you. Till this point of time, you have listened to me very patiently, And I want to intimate you one more thing. Tomorrow, I'm having a scheduled engagement. It was fixed 15 days back in the evening. So I won't be able to take your class tomorrow. The last class will be held on Saturday. Will there be any problem for you at the same time? Mukesh, Surbi,
No, sir.
I want to
No,
hear
sir, it's
from
fine.
each one of you. Mukesh, I want to take the last class on Saturday at 5:30.
No, sir, no issues with me.
Pinky and Taniska.
No, sir, no
Hello? Okay. So tomorrow there will be no class. Your last class will be taken on Saturday at 5:30, and we'll be finishing the entire paper that day. So till this point, Mukesh, am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Survey, am I fully understood?
Yes, sir.
So now
So,
we'll be
sir,
moving to marketing logistics.
sorry, sir, to interrupt, but just one question. So, sir, basically, this all is theory only, right? So, I just
Yes.
wanted to like ask that, like in exam, when we write the answers, like
Hmm.
what is kind of expected from us to, because I mean, in theory, I mean, it's never. I mean, it's not easy to score, and like what is expected. For example, if like they ask us about the retailers, or like
Okay.
so
Okay.
like we need to, yeah.
A very valid question. I'm just giving you a sample. If they ask you about a retailer, suppose a question comes that what are the functions of retailers and classify the retailers on different basis. So in that case, first any type of this question, first you write the definition of retailer either in 2 to 3 sentences. Okay. Then straight away, if it has asked about the functions, straight away make a side heading functions of retailers. Just suppose in your book, let me see, suppose in your book 7 points have been given. And you may not remember all the 7 points. You remember 4 or 5 points. Which points look suitable to you, you remember those. You just concentrate on writing only the side heading. Whatever you explain on those lines, it's okay. Estimating of demand, whatever you have understood, estimating of demand means because the retailer is placing the order with the wholesaler for a specific quantity, that means it is actually assessing the demand of the consumer. In that way it is assessing. So you can write off your own. You can state out of 7 points, you can state 4 or 5 points. Then regarding classification, you just give 2 classification. One is your itinerant and next one is your fixed shop retailers. And in this category, you just write the definition of itinerant retailers. Then give examples like of hawkers, pavement traders or market traders. Don't explain them. Similarly, when you talk about fixed shop retailers, you just give the categories, small scale, large scale. If possible, give some examples of small scale retailers, give some examples of large scale retailers. You don't need to elaborately describe about supermarket, departmental store, your cooperative store, hire purchaser traders. You don't need to elaborate on all those things. You just write them point wise. Instead of writing and in case of other questions also, in case of writing a paragraph comprising of 10 sentences, it is always better to write 7 points instead of writing 10 sentences in a paragraph. It always adds to your presentation, and always try to present the theory point wise except the introduction part and the conclusion part. Okay, Surbi?
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
You make it a habit that whenever you will be asked questions, whether it is for your children, you are supposed to give answers because sometimes they will be having some doubt and they will ask you some questions. From now onwards, you also guide them to write whatever answers in form of points, and that will make them more specific, and in future that will help them also.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So now we'll be moving into
Thank you, sir.
welcome. Now we'll be moving into marketing logistics. Basically, logistics means the detailed organization and implementation of a complex operation. Marketing logistics means it describes the planning, implementation, and controlling the physical flows of materials and related information from point of origin to point of consumption. Again, I am saying marketing logistics describes the process of moving raw materials and components from a farm or from the point of origin to the point of consumption to meet the customer's requirement. Actually, marketing logistics is a part of your supply chain management. Before discussing marketing logistics, we must discuss the supply chain management in brief. Supply chain management means when production logistics and marketing logistics are put together, combinedly they make supply chain management. So marketing logistics is a part of supply chain management. Supply chain management is also known as logistics management. And the production logistics, what does that mean? Let me give more clarity. Production logistics means it is the inbound logistics. Inbound logistics means it includes all the activities associated with bringing raw materials to the point of production and moving the in-process goods through the farm. That means inbound logistics, it includes all the activities that facilitates the production of a particular item. All the inbound facilities, internal facilities are known as production logistics. Similarly, all the outbound logistics, that means the activities which are concerned with the efficient movement of finished product from the manufacturer to the consumer is known as outbound logistics or marketing logistics. So this must be done in a very efficient way to give maximum profit to the organization. So for marketing logistics, the major elements are, you can think of yourself, you can guess, it is transportation, it is order processing, it is inventory maintenance, it is packaging, warehousing, all those things, all those elements constitute marketing logistics. What are the importance of marketing logistics? Marketing logistics, well, I will describe you just 3 or 4 importance, because these importance will be related to the objectives of marketing logistics. One is effective marketing logistics can provide a major source of competitive advantage. if you manage your marketing logistics effectively, you can gain competitive advantage in terms of pricing. Secondly, because of the ever increasing demanding nature of business environment, demanding nature means either they demand for more quantity or they demand for differently designed product. Because of the increasingly demanding nature of the business environment, an effective marketing logistic is essential to address, to satisfy the need of customers. And similarly, when day by day the cost of raw materials, bank interest rates, energy cost increasing, you have to manage the marketing logistic in such a way that it should not have impact, it should not have more impact on the final price of the product at which the consumer is accepting you. So these are the importances. When we consider these importances, then objectives of marketing logistics should be very clear that we want to improve on customer service, because an efficient management of marketing logistics helps to improve the level of customer service by developing a system which can quickly and economically make the product available to them, to the customers. Also, the objective of an efficient marketing logistic is to reduce distribution costs. We already discussed that. Then effective management also creates time and place utilities for the product. It also helps the organizations to have price stabilization. Then what are the components, major components of marketing logistics, which forms the marketing logistics? One is your order processing. First, the manufacturer gets an order. Immediately after getting the order, it records the order. Then assemble all such orders for transportation to different locations. After doing that, it needs warehousing. Warehousing means once the organization, the manufacturer starts processing of order, that's order processing. Then the different lot of orders, different lot of items need to be placed in a godam, in a storehouse. That is called warehousing in a safe and sound manner, so that it will not be hampered by an external factor. There are different warehouses, storehouses for different purposes. Like for your milk, fruits, vegetables, you need refrigerated warehouse. For your materials like petroleum, gasoline, you need bulk storage warehouse. For storing cotton, you need specialty warehouse, because these items need a special warehouse to be stored. So different warehouses as per the requirement of the product. Then also another component of marketing logistics is transportation. Now transportation can be done in many ways, either by road or by rail or by air or by pipeline. So among all these, rail transportation is the cheapest form of transportation on land. There are several methods in rail transportation. You can go through your book and understand it easily. That is unitized train, piggyback service, containerization. In road transport also there are private carriers, common carriers. And Pipeline transportation, they facilitate transportation of petroleum products, natural gas, chemicals. So transportation is a big factor, and it decides how effectively, how cost effectively an organization or a manufacturer delivers its products to different parts of the country. In rail transportation, this is the most cost effective way, and at a time the manufacturer can send a heavy amount of product. Then in marketing logistics, what are the approaches that are generally adopted? The widely adopted method is total system approach. Total system approach means it will take into account all the main factors, the transportation, the warehousing, the inventory carrying, the interest on capital employed, all the factors into account. It will treat all the factors to be an integral part of the main system, and will try to smoothen the activities that have been taking place in all these four components, to streamline them, to complement each other, so that it can minimize the cost of distribution and maximize the services provided to the customers. This system approach, total system approach, is a scientific way of management. It looks at the marketing logistics in its total form as a system consisting of several interconnected tasks. Similarly, there is another approach which is called total cost approach. Actually, it is a corollary of total system approach. Total system approach is the main approach in which all the activities, all the components are taken to be the integral parts of the main system and considered combinedly. Similarly, total cost approach, here the cost in all these elements, all these components are taken into account. This is a corollary of total system approach. So with this we come to the end of your fifth unit, distribution decisions. Tomorrow we will be discussing about, tomorrow we are having no class. Let me remind you once again. We will be having class on Saturday at 5:30. Thank you so much for listening patiently to me for the last 2 hours. I'm really thankful to all of you. See you on Saturday at 5:30. Till then, have very nice moments. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Good night, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Good night, sir.
Good night.